All right, I'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled Board of Finance meeting for Wednesday, November 9th of 2022. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Dan DeRosis will not be in attendance tonight, so we will be down one member. Is there anybody here for public comment? Seeing none, we can move on. Communications and correspondence.
We just received one, which was from Andrew Ellis.
Thank you. Minutes, previous meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from October 12th, 2022.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right, on to the report of the first select woman.
Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing great. It's been a long couple days. I don't know who, I know John was there, but I may have listened in or heard, or maybe Marcia back briefed you on the Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday, but Jules prepared this report for the board, so I thought I'd share it with you, and he has updated numbers as of today. The long and the short of it is that the Board of Selectmen decided to, I took it to vote to lock or to not lock, and we decided to lock. Fuel prices, if you look at the graph that Jules prepared on the right-hand side of the first page, you'll see that back in June, we looked high, and then there was a dip in August. It's kind of been all over the place. There was an opportunity for the lowest point in time, which was a Friday afternoon on September 23rd at $3.50. It went up to 4.359 in late October. And then we thought that was the high, but as of today, since we decided to lock, it's now at 4.388, which is the high. So it's very untimely since Monday that the numbers, or since the 1st, which was our last estimate. The good news is that if we do lock, we'll be saving the town some money versus going in on the rack or spot or daily rate, whatever you want to call it. The daily rate as of today is $5.50 for diesel and almost $5.30 for oil, and gas is at 3.3. We've locked in the propane. We're going to be joining the consortium for gas in January, so locking in oil and diesel will take us through the end of the fiscal year. I just wanted to share those numbers with you. I think Marcia has the current amounts that we're going to be needing an increase for her portion of the brief tonight. Does anybody have any questions on any of this? It's, I've been trying to be very patient. That was my strategic decision, to wait. Obviously, it was not a great decision, but it's a very unprecedented and turbulent time.
You can't time it. Is there a consortium for number 2 fuel oil?
Yes.
Okay, and when would that?
July 1st.
July 1st, so
essentially.
the next fiscal.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Do we have any idea what their rates are now?
No. We don't even know the gas rates for the consortium in January, but we've committed now, and there's 37 towns part of
I'm
that.
sure it's better.
so-
Yeah. You're seeing better rates than we see at home, so obviously the more you buy, the better rate it is.
We did go out to bid in the middle of this venture of trying to figure out, and just it was a bad day, and all the rates came in really high, and
It's up and down every day. There's no way.
so I thought yesterday would have kind of alleviated some of the pressure. Maybe in the next few days it'll come down slightly. Look, I'm not a commodities expert. I have no idea, but
Yeah, oil's down 3.5% today. Could be up 4% tomorrow. You just don't know. You can't.
but winter is coming, and yeah, I think it's just time to commit. And so Jules is going to be working on getting that locked in over the next day or so. We did touch a little bit on electricity. Well, in his presentation, the last bullet on the last slide, but we ended up not even talking about electricity on Monday. To be honest with you, since Monday night, I haven't even had a chance to relook at electricity, so that's kind of out there.
We're locked in until because we can only lock in half, I forgot if it's supply or demand, or
Delivery.
generation, but we're locked in with whatever we can lock in until December of 2024.
But for supply only, right?
Correct, we can only lock in on one, which is approximately half of it, correct.
And so the delivery fee could fluctuate. Any other questions on fuel slash,
You know what the rate is on the supply? Just curious.
It's on the last page of that sheet that you.
That's great.
And we, since Jules has gotten here, that we had all these different, I forgot how many we have, like 45 different accounts, and they were all on different cycles, and so we've worked really hard he's worked really hard to get them all on the same cycle so that we can go out with all of them at the same time.
that's great. Okay. I have a couple of other items I just kind of want to touch on. And this is all part of the overall concern of, what are our needs going to be? How are we going to afford it? Moving into budget, making sure that departments are ready to present what their needs are. So when we talk about human capital, I do have some major salary concerns, which is why in the last cycle we built in the salary study, which I haven't gotten to yet, but there's been a lot happening. We had Lisa Yu leave the health department. She was our sanitarian. Her salary is considerably low, and for someone with those skills, we're going to be hard pressed to ever find someone to come in at that rate. So we need to reevaluate that. And now that we have the full-time health director, we have a part-time position to help play catch-up for the work that Doc just wasn't able to get through, especially through the COVID period. And so there's kind of a lot to consider vis-a-vis that one sanitarian vacancy. The staffing at the senior center, it's almost embarrassing. We have faithful, hardworking employees serving our residents for $18 an hour. There's just things that we need to reconsider. So there's some other staff where their salaries just are not commensurate to what's going on across the board. So I'm starting to take a look at that.
Let's stop there, because we gave money for a salary study. It didn't happen. We're quite a bit into the year now. Budget season's starting. We have a position also that you're admin or executive admin. Rumor is that it's going out at a very high rate. And when I looked at the numbers in the area, it's $10,000 more than what CCM data says and what the town budgets all say. And this is why we gave the salary study money, was because in this position, you have a chance possibly to save that position $10,000, which we could have shifted to the people who aren't compensated. Right now, our executive admin is the highest paid in the area.
Okay, Glenn.
So I'm just saying, salary study, if you're asking us for money, and I'm saying we gave you,
I'm not asking you for anything.
Well, you're
I'm
saying
telling
we
you
gotta
some
move
of
and
the
support.
things that I'm starting to consider as we move towards the budget.
and I'm just saying
And
our
I'm going to
position.
defend our
of-
staff that work hard for the town.
We'll discuss that somewhere else.
I don't know
because
why
again,
you're bringing this up. Ginny's
You just
salary, I
asked
didn't know
for
at the
money.
time Ginny was going to be retiring. This all just
Never mind,
fell
we're
out
on a
of the
different
sky.
page. We're on a different page. You do what you need to do.
What are you trying to say?
What I'm trying to say is we gave you money for a salary study to get out of this discussion of people aren't paid enough. But when you look at when people aren't paid enough, you gotta look at where people are paid over in the area. And then we gotta find that happy medium, and that's where the salary study was gonna drive us. Because we probably have 5 or 6, 7, 8 staff members that make more than Newtown, that make more than all the area towns, work less hours, make more money. So we can balance this to the people who aren't compensated properly for their jobs that they're doing. That was part of where the salary study was gonna guide us. Hey, the salaries in Newtown for the executive admin is $65,000. They have twice as many people as we have. Brookfield is higher than them. The same thing with other positions. We pay the highest amount of money to numerous positions in the area, and there are gonna be some people that aren't underpaid, but we can't have everybody equal and have 10% higher or 15% higher. We can't carry that
Well, why
salary.
was that salary increased? You know, why did it get to that point? How did it become that rate? That's the rate that it was set at. Same thing with hiring other employees
No,
across
we-
the
we have
town
a
out of
difference of
budget
opinion.
cycle.
That when you have someone with 30 years of experience, they're gonna make more money than bringing someone in that doesn't have experience. That's the reality of the world. When, just like the teachers retire at 90,000, we bring them in at 60,000. We start the process of doing it where we gain back. You can't keep having everybody being the highest paid in the area. We can't afford it with everything that's going on. And you mentioned in your report just now, you said, we have a position that we can't fill because it's not compensatory to the area.
That's right, and there's a shortage of these skills across the state.
So, and then tell me why Brookfield should be the highest paid in the area
Did I
across
say
the board
they
and
should be the
south.
highest paid?
But you're making it that way, you're
Okay,
not correcting
You know
it.
what, I don't have to explain to you where my mind is regarding the employees of this town.
That's perfect, then we don't have
And
to
we'll move
explain
on to
why
the
we
next
don't
thing.
approve
Can I-
things.
will the salary study be done before the budget cycle starts so that we
The
have?
salary study was approved at the referendum in May. The first thing out of my mouth just now was I have not had a chance to get to
But do
it
we
yet.
think that that will
And
have some-
actually, I've been holding on to it because we might need that $20,000 to pay for fuel through the winter, depending on how all of this pans out.
Okay.
If we have to move money around, I might not do the salary study. Because, and the other thing is, which we talked about through the last budget, was if we move forward and execute the salary study, it may prove that we're short in many areas, and then how are we gonna afford to compensate that?
We can't do one-offs, we gotta either do it or get it done and get it right
We
and
can't do
figure it out.
one-offs.
Yeah.
So the building department, let me bring this up, they're inundated, completely overwhelmed. And the revenue they're producing is, I think, more than the town has ever seen.
And have we utilized all the staff and gone through who
I
can
tried
work
a
and-
different approach through the entire winter.
Okay.
Found an intern, that didn't work out. Have had, and there's always been
Where'd the intern
part-time
come
help
from,
in
by
there.
the way?
WestCon,
Okay, so that's good.
Political Science Department.
All right.
You know, we have other budgetary human capital considerations with the ARPA. ARPA isn't Nurse Tracy was under a COVID grant, but that's going to be expiring. She has been a tremendous asset to this town, so something to consider is, are we going to want to retain a nurse for the town once the COVID grant expires? Same thing with our behavioral health specialist, who's covered by ARPA. That person has been doing tremendous work in many facets across town. But going back to the building department, we're gonna have a really big problem there. I had to shake the piggy bank to get some coverage and some relief, but that's a Band-Aid. So going into the budget, I'm gonna have to find a way to build in some part-time help. I wanted to say that we reappointed the capital committee members, so thank you to both of you for agreeing to be on that. I look forward to working with you once you reconvene.
I actually look forward to attending the meeting in person. Because I fortunately couldn't last year, so
Right.
I was happy to be able to be here.
I had the privilege and pleasure of participating in the presentation to the rating agency for the general obligation of the bonds issuance for the $7.4 million on the 3rd of November, and the team did a great job. I think it went over really well, and we're in waiting to find out if that will be committed. Some other considerations, as you know, costs continue to rise. This morning I found out that the snowplow company contractually is looking for more money. I think it's an additional $32,000, which would take the contract to $60,000. I'm exploring at this very moment other ways to approach it. Can we get Parks and Rec to potentially do it? From what I understand, they have the equipment, they just don't have the manpower, so we could potentially take away a part-time seasonal and rearrange some of the manpower to decrease some of these excess costs. We could look at breaking out the bid so that it's in smaller parts, because a lot of these plow companies or, one-man shop kind of people might look at the bid. I don't know, I didn't look at the bid, but the bid closed The lowest bid did come back at this $32,000 increase, but in my mind, I think there might be another way about it. So more to follow on that. I mentioned at the meeting about center school repurposing, because as we move towards the budget, center school will be vacated in August. What are we gonna do? Are we gonna occupy it? Are we gonna leave it empty? Are we gonna sell it? I mean, you know, the ad hoc committee, kind of, there was nothing committed to the plan for the repurposing of the ad hoc committee. However, the library study for $30,000 was approved last year, and that study will be complete, and they'll be briefing the Board of Selectmen on the 5th of December. So more to follow on that, but as we move towards the budget, we're gonna need to know what we're budgeting for, what we're looking at.
Are we sure about center school closing in August? Just say there's more supply chain issues and they have to obviously tear down Huckleberry. Could that actually go into next fiscal year, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, if the new school isn't ready, then kids are gonna have to stay. But right now, I'm being told that the school will open in the fall. Greg gave a great presentation, and if you were there or listened to it, about all the moving pieces of the town center district vis-a-vis the Still River Greenway and the way the next phases of streetscape tie in and everything else. There's just a lot happening. We did make one decision to cancel phase 6, which was the idea of bringing the Greenway up to Laurel Hill. So he's gonna start working through the process of looking for permissions to maybe reallocate lots of money from 6 to 4, phase 4 that is. And then Still River Greenway extension northbound would be phase 4 of streetscape, basically. So it would run northbound from Agora on the west side of Federal Road up towards Newberry, and eventually connect over and look for an easement through kind of behind the Bridge to Nowhere property at the end of Federal Road, and then eventually connect to New Milford. So that was all articulated on Monday night, and there's just going to be a lot of work to do and trying to figure out the funding. And that's all I have, unless you guys have any questions on any of that.
Just a question on the Greenway. I remember when Greg presented us about that next phase last year, he mentioned that the reason why the town center district streetscape stuff and the Still River Greenway are separate projects is because it's not wide enough to be considered a greenway. So does that just mean it would be a break in the greenway and people have to walk their bikes on the sidewalk before
For a certain portion, so where the trail ends, which is I think in front of the tire shop or by the funeral home, I don't know exactly.
I think it's by that red building in front of Kids Kingdom. Remember that Kids
There's a
Kingdom?
sign that says you're supposed to get off your bike, you know, cross, and then
Yeah.
not get back on your bike,
Yeah, I think
basically.
that's just yeah.
But then, so it would be a 5-foot sidewalk all the way through Four Corners to beyond, like to Agora. Because
Okay.
Agora's ledge comes out too far, so there's not
Yeah.
enough room to put that 8-foot requirement.
Yeah.
So the 8-foot sidewalk for the trail would begin after Agora, and then there would be a sign where you can like get back on your bike.
Okay. Does that impact Grant? I mean, I guess that's something he'll be exploring. If it
The-
impacts Grant, if it's not truly a greenway because it's not wide
I
enough.
think there are exceptions, which the ARPA study that paid for the consultant to do the options to
Yeah.
carry the Still River Greenway northbound spoke to that, and it's all part of trail plans and everything else where,
Is there any discussion also, maybe also reallocating that as part of the southbound Still River Greenway? I know that there was talk about making part of the town park here accessible, which if you go to the concerts, you can see that that is an issue, that,
yeah.
you know, bringing the Still River Greenway up to here to the parking lot or something like that. Is
Yeah,
that
I'm
also
smiling
being
because I
explored?
actually asked that question. I'm like, if
Okay.
the northbound option is just a bridge too far or whatever, can we look at going southbound? And
Because
it
parking
was
is
crickets.
every time you
So,
drive by Still River Greenway parking.
yeah. The overarching idea was to run it both northbound and southbound and connect to Danbury, but I mean, that could
Yeah.
just,
Someday.
I don't know if
We'll get
I'll
there.
ever see that in my
Yeah.
lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good question. I think it's something worth exploring. I guess the idea is because the options that were presented, one of which ran behind Riverview and Newbury, it's just, we had a public hearing and the residents, it was very loud and clear, not gonna happen. For Riverview, we'd have to obtain an easement for them, which we would never get, because their answer is just a hard no. Option 3 would have taken it over the bridge by the craft center and then kind of parallel the railroad tracks, which is a lot of right-of-way problems and the ledge and the train, and it's just, so that one's, and building bridges, it's millions and millions of dollars. So the easiest method is to coincide it with the sidewalk on Federal Road. One of my concerns was that the new development that's going in where the barnyard was is going to be putting in some kind of a sidewalk in front of their 2 big apartment buildings. That wasn't gonna match, but now we've had a meeting and now the requirement is that it needs to match the streetscape, or it's not gonna kind of tie everything together. There's more on that. I mean, I could talk about phase 3 and the flagpole versus the sculpture and all that, but if anybody has any questions on it, feel free to ask.
Any other questions? Thank you. All right, Bob Belden, we're moving on to report of Finance Director. Bob Belden called, he will not be in attendance. The Finance Committee doesn't meet until next week, so he really had no updates to offer that were different from what we already know, other than the fuel, which was
I've
presented.
got that included in mine.
So we're on to you, Marcia, revenue and expenditures.
All right, so revenue, that we're doing great on the revenue. That we've got some of the, most of this you've heard about last month. That and you'll see on this slide, I'm trying to divide it between recurring and one-time, so that when we get to the expenditures, we can try and divide it between recurring and one-time and match that. Large development fees, we haven't had any new ones this month, but the ones from last month that we anticipated were collected. Motor vehicle grant, we know that because of the timing, the state dropped that after we had already passed our budget. Last month, we talked about the municipal revenue sharing grant that the CCM had said, don't put in your budget. Even when I talked to them the first week of October, when it was due October 1st, they said, wait and see if you get the cash. They have no idea. We did get it. We got 336. We normally wouldn't have got that because of the penalty for, the towns have a penalty if they exceed their budget goes up more than 2.5% or the rate of inflation, that this grant gets reduced. Well, we've never dealt with that because they've never paid the grant before. That it's been out there for 6-7 years. But there was a special act for this year that said that penalty doesn't apply. So between them funding it for the first time, the penalty not applying, we got that grant. That don't ever expect it again. Some miscellaneous other Connecticut revenue. IDA, all of IDA has now been obligated. We had some last year, and this is what we have this year. The vaccine had already been obligated. FEMA, I'm going to talk about at the next slide. And the interest earnings that were up to 3.75%. So it's a little bit higher than last month. I'm working on my cash flow schedule, and I just adjusted the interest rate, and we had $200,000 of interest this month. Adjusting the interest rate is bringing us more money. Because nobody is expecting the interest rates to go down. And then we did have an allowance in the budget because we didn't want to be too conservative. We had put $200,000 extra in the budget, and we've exceeded that. The FEMA, all these little check marks I've been watching as it goes through all the different approvals that need to be done, and then back to the beginning. We're in the final phases. They cut it another $750 today after this, so it's $557 something. because they're saying the Zoom membership that we put in there is really an operating cost. Okay, well, we thought it was for social distancing, but whatever.
Wouldn't have bought it otherwise.
We can pull it out, we could pull it out so this one keeps going. And if we really wanted to contest it, we could put them in a separate application and fight for it that, if we get 560,000, I'm pretty excited. So we're in the final stages. A little bit about this, when we first talked about this one, it was just pie in the sky, thinking that, is this a real grant? Because nobody's talking about it. That was about the budget time, and we said, well, maybe we could put that aside in a reserve. And so when we do the health insurance budget, that we always use this percent. So let's say it's 10%. And if the health insurance comes in at 9%, we throw the extra percent that we budgeted into a reserve, kind of like a stabilization fund. And if health insurance, like it did this year, comes in higher, then we pull it out of this fund. And so that's something, we had talked about that as a strategy. The Board of Ed is pulling their budget together now. And if we had some ideas on that, and if we thought we might want to do that, it would be great if they knew, because they're looking for direction on what to do for health insurance. There is a meeting next Monday that I'll be attending, the virtual meeting, and part of it is they're going to talk about their expectation for the rates. Okay, well, you did a bad job last year with your expectation for the rates. So I don't know if that's going to be helpful or not, but we'll see what they have to say. I can say that I spent quite a bit of time on the phone tonight with Kevin, as our former deputy, that as he's going through their issues, that they got caught, their Board of Ed got caught with the same thing. Our Board of Ed's looking for 180,000 or something. Theirs is looking for 630. So that we at least use higher percentages in our budget than they did. And the towns are remarkably the same size. If we were going to do something, it'd be great to do something now as we're going through the budget process, and a little earlier, because they're going through their budget process now. Other thing about revenues is part of all this that and going through trying to understand how the bank charges us our fees. That we got into this whole thing because they were giving us what they called a haircut on our investments, because and Newtown was not. Union was doing the haircut, Newtown was not. I said, it doesn't make sense since you're charging us fees and Newtown is not. And of course they say, oh, but we don't charge you fees. Okay, you don't charge us fees, but you don't give us interest. The same thing. And so just going through and just trying to prepare for that meeting to try and get better interest rates, I tried to make sure I knew how they were charging the fees, what fees they were charging, scheduled it all out. And the easy answer is they take an amount and put it aside, and the interest on that pays for the fees. The interest on that is called interest credits. So they put aside 2.7 million and they multiply it by 0.85%. And so in November of 21, the interest on that is, and it must be a different number of days because the rate never changes from 0.85%. This is their schedule. That they give us 0.85%, and oh, look, that covers the fees, so we don't have to pay any fees. Okay. So now the interest rates are going up, and it was great. They were giving us credit for 0.85% when the interest rate was 1.0. That was a really good deal for us. I thank you for that. But now the interest rates are going up, and they're still holding 2.7, multiplying it by 0.85, and saying, oh, that covers the fees. But we could be getting 3% on that. That's $60,000 a year. And they say, oh, well, governments don't like to do that because it will fluctuate and that'll ruin their budget. We can figure that out. But what I'd like to do is tell them if we're all open to this, and it would be Tara and John, that to say, charge us the fees. Give us, and we're gonna invest this money at 3%. The downside is, if the interest rate goes down below 0.85%, we're behind the 8 ball. But hopefully, we've had a few years where we were ahead, so overall, we're good. That for this year, yeah, it's true, we don't have something in our budget. Why can't we just net it with the revenue? That's what they're doing already. I don't want to hide it. I just want to say I'd like to change the format of this and then it was just today that they finally, John pushed them, and they finally got back to us to say, oh no, it's even. That no, it's not even with the opportunity cost. And so I'd like to continue on this, net the fees for this year with the interest income. Next year, maybe put the fees in as an expenditure, because I don't want them to get lost in there. But would have it in the budget process. And if everyone's okay with that, I'd like to push that forward. It's, to me, at 3% interest, which is what we were getting before this last increase. That's almost $60,000, $58,000 a year. That seems to be a no-brainer to me. So that is the revenue. Any questions on revenues?
When does that decision need to be made?
We can make it any time. They're just going to continue doing what they're doing now until we get there. And in December is when they say, oh, is that 2.7 high enough considering the fees? And we've gone through and looked at how they calculated all the fees. We've closed as many accounts as we can. We've stopped on the closed accounts. We've already reconciled and been audited, so we're no longer having online access. That saves us money. So we tried to reduce the fees as much as possible. So they should be pretty stable going forward. So there's no time frame on that. We just have to get it done. And we haven't heard anything from them that we're dealing with our particular banker. If we say we want to do this, will someone higher up in the bank come back to us and say, oh, no, those were discounted fees based on this scenario? We don't know any of that. All right. The expenditures that we've got, on the town, we've got some variances. I sent it to you, Schedule B1. I'm keeping a running list of what we know about in the expenditures. A lot of little ups and downs. The big things, there's 3 big things. Fuel. It's $74,000 for the town side, based on the rates of not locking in as of November 1st. I didn't update with today's rates. So that's was potentially $74,000.
64 now, right?
Well, it would be less if we lock in, and I just didn't, to be honest, I didn't even look at the rates from today.
It's more.
But this was the spot pricing as of November 1st. The Candlewood Lake Road assessment, Steve had been doing that, and then it dropped on to me that when he left, that we have to do the assessment. And I just didn't get to it. I wanted to do it in advance. We took out our loan September 30th. And I thought it would be really cool if we, instead of waiting a year and gotten our payments on the assessments in arrears, to get them in advance. It's just, I'm the bottleneck on that, didn't get it done, but I did have it in the budget. So that's a savings that of 74 one-time savings, but those two more or less offset each other coincidentally. Snow plowing, that's the $32,000 that Mary Knox did make some adjustments to try and knock it down, to go out to, it was intended to be a multi-year bid, but with the prices, not make it a multi-year bid. If this is what we're doing, Tara's still working on it, but that would be $32,000. The rest are little things, $5,000, $3,000, $100 that can just offset each other, ups and downs, nothing significant. The Board of Ed has a variance as of September 30th. They told us it was $636,000 or so. That looking at the fuel that they had in there and the prices on November 1st for the fuel, that they would need $210,000 more than that. If we didn't lock in. These were spot prices if we weren't locking in. That was the highest, the worst case scenario of November 1st. And generally, we come to you with transfers quarterly, October, January, April, and then we do it monthly after that. So all of these, we're not asking for any changes at this time. We're trying to develop a strategy of what should be done with that. Audit. They've done the field work. We owe them capital assets. We've got a new capital asset program. I'm working through that, getting it in, trying to make sure that it's coded so that it meets all of our needs. We report the balance sheet on our financial statements by type of asset. We report the depreciation by function of the asset. I wanted to be able to, make sure the coding is in there so we can do it by just running a report. We also want to make sure the coding is in there so we can print a report and say, here's the assets you have in your department, sign off on them that you still have them, or if you don't, what happened to them. We have assets for the financial statements, and we have assets for an inventory that, and my thought is with the program, we'll just set up two different databases, the capitalized assets and the inventory assets. And then WPCA, they have an outside accountant that does some of their work for them. That I talked to him today. He's very frustrated that they use, like we do for our tax collections, they use a company called Quality Data that for 35 years when I was an auditor, I used to say, the only place there's quality is in the name. Probably not true if anyone's listening. Don't sue me. But they're giving him report. They're not responding. They, being Quality Data, are not responding. That when they do respond, he's asking questions about how come you gave me this report on this date. In the past, and then you printed it again, and I've got different numbers on it. It's hard to balance to a moving target and to figure out. So there's nothing that I can do to help, or that the WPCA can do to help. That he's waiting for Quality Data to be more responsive and get back to him. So that's where that stands. Right now, we know of no findings. I have to finish the financial statement. The financial statements, everything that we use will be done by budget season. I've got concerns that we won't have the audit issued by December 31st. But that's where we stand on the audit. Other updates, the rating call we had on November 3rd, the sale of the bonds is the 17th. This graph shows the last 4 years of where interest rates went on tax-exempt municipal bonds over 20-year maturities. The rates are going up. We had about the lowest rates of anyone on our two huge sales. 1.55 and 1.84 for the two tranches of the school, and that was fabulous. Because they were so low, Steve and John decided to do them over 20 years instead of 30. Huge savings for that. A little painful for right now, but a long term, it's great savings. But our expectation is it's going to be close to 4, and this is why this is what our bond advisors told us, and that's what the graph shows us as well. We sell them next Thursday, and so we'll know for sure. Good news that we got our ratings back today. They're in your package. I sent them as a final an update. I got them about 5 o'clock and sent them to you after that. AAA with a stable outlook is maintained. That I think that that's your hard work there and discipline. That the reasons based on the report, and it'll be uploaded to the website as tomorrow as soon as Dan gets in. Robust economic development was one of the things they referred to. Financial management practices and policies. Increasing reserves. Although we have lots of debt, we have manageable and we have managed the fixed costs. The pension is 100% funded, a little bit, down a little bit with this market. And we've discontinued the OPEB liabilities, so those will just be decreasing, and conservative and disciplined on the finances. And we just have to keep that up. And trying to talk about this, on what this means, I tried to quantify what that means. That on average, the AAA over a AA is 10 basis points. We have $113 million worth of debt. It's $113,000 of interest a year. That we have, and this is just down and dirty, nothing. We can poke holes at that, I know. That we used to do bond anticipation notes every year to try and fund the projects, so we had the cash flow before we had the fund balance that we do. That we don't do that anymore. It's expensive. That was $80,000 a year. That now we can fund them with our fund balance. And if you just look at the fund balance that we have, at the interest rates we're getting, $450,000. So this AAA means about $600,000 a year to us. That in addition to, it means that we're trying to keep current on good financial practices. That so we just have to continue the discipline, continue the long-term focus that you guys have done a great job with. Pension is exciting. That we had expected that it would drop. That our annual payments on pension used to be called, it's called ADAC now, and now I'm too old to remember what it used to be called. But our pension payments dropped by $1 million for 2024 and 2025. That when we talked about it and expecting that it would drop, we talked about we should invest that in other retirement benefits. That so here we go. That this is showing what our pension payments were last year, the current year that we're in, how much. This is the allocation for next year. That the town will be saving about $700,000. This is what we have for OPEB, for the ADAC for this year. The valuation should be coming out at any time now, but assuming next year is about the same, we do make a payment towards the OPEB every year. Direct payment of $100,000 in our budget, sometimes up to $200,000. Plus, we do the pay-as-you-go, that we're paying the health insurance premiums about $400,000. So we haven't been paying the ADAC. We're short about $700,000 on that every year. okay, we could take this 700,000 and put it to that 700,000 and do 100% funding of the ADAC for just 2 years. We also talked about this firefighters. We don't have even a trust set up for that yet. We're talking, I think the pension attorney is working on that because the fire department was gonna fund when they sell their fire truck, $100,000 of that, and Glenn negotiated that. That we don't, because we don't have a trust, we're not required to get a valuation, so we don't have an ADAC, but trying to break down the pension expense from the disclosure reporting, it's about $129,000 a year is the expense. We do the pay-as-you-go payments, which last year were $54,000. So it's unfunded expense, unfunded ADAC, maybe it's about the same, I was thinking, is about $75,000. But if we take 2 years of savings here and apply it to this liability, right now, because we don't have a trust, we have to use a discount rate at the bond rates, the AAA bond rates, 20 years. So that was, at the time this report was done by the actuary, that was 2.2 million. The actuary also tells us if we increase that by 1%, it would be 1.9. So just prorating that to say, well, what if we went up to 6.5, our current discount rate on OPEB and the pension, if we used a discount rate of 6.5, it might be 1.3. With 2 years, we could get this firefighters LoSAP 100% funded. And so that's what I want you to think about, that just knocks it off the list, and then every year we pay right now where we're paying the actual payments to the retired firefighters out of the budget, about a $55,000 budget line. Instead, we would be paying them out of the trust, and we would be paying the ADAC every year in the budget. Any questions on any of that? All right. That's it.
Thank you. Dan's not here, so we will not have the audit committee. We'll catch up in the next month. Any old business anyone want to discuss? Any new business anybody wants to discuss? Any other items? Public comment? Hearing none. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.